about Broken Britain. I'm just basically testing out one of the themes that's going to be part of the many themes which are part of the new OBG show. So let's ask the question, what's going on in the UK at the moment? I can answer that. Okay, so let's do it this way. The UK, Britain, it has potential. It always has had potential. And let's have a look. Just make sure the jingles are working. Okay. Right, so the UK has always had potential, but it's currently under threat because the rich are rubbing it dry whilst ordinary people feel the tight grip of oppression. And who knows what it's going to actually lead to. So let's begin. We're in a kitchen, a light lit, a dull, dim lit kitchen. A mother sets a kettle on the table and she wonders and sighs because the price of milk's gone up again. The bills are tucked into the drawer, the same drawer as last month, the same old bills, and the month before that. Then she looks out of her window at her neighbourhood, the same street that she's lived on for 20 years, yet everything feels like it's shifting beneath her feet. And this is one of the stories of modern Britain, the creeping weight of the everyday. In the old days, in the 19th century, Britain of the industrial age, families might have faced long hours in mills or factories, but they had some sense of upward motion. Today, many in the UK actually feel stuck. So first of all, let's talk about the economy and living standards. The economy is a key factor, and according to Ipsos, polling company, a large proportion of Britons now say the economy is the most important issue facing them. Now, Ipsos, it isn't an acronym, by the way, I had to look it up. It comes from the Latin word Ipsos, and it means themselves or of themselves, and that's quite fitting for a research company whose work is actually about understanding what people think for themselves. Anyway, beneath the economy, beneath all the headlines that we see lies MLA. Long-term wage stagnation, low productivity, and the feeling that things formerly taken for granted are slipping. For instance, the Productivity Institute, they report that the UK's labour productivity growth has averaged only around 0.5% a year since the financial crisis. And if you think back to the post-war era, Britain, rebuilding, optimism was high, the spirit of 1945 was echoing through the new housing estates that were built everywhere. I actually grew up on one called the Pembury Estate in Dagenham. And there was a launching of the National Health Service. But today the housing stock may be improved, but so many are locked out of the ownership and they're forced into paying way too much to rent. In fact, the median home in England costs nearly 8 times the average household's disposable income. And the writer and social commentator, Toni Morrison, he once said something along the lines of, you can't build hope on credit and bills. And that feels apt for right now. So talking about the public health and national health, the National Health Service actually stands as one of the symbolic pillars of the UK state, and it's truly an amazing service. But the public's faith is under strain. There's long waiting lists, staff shortages, funding pressures, and they're all parcel of this system that's getting a stranglehold on it. Now, if we go back to the mid-19th century, one might recall the public health challenges of the Victorian era, water sanitation, sanitation in general, building regulations, and even health and safety, they were all absent. Then reformers of that time, including Florence Nightingale, they pressed for systems of care and for public hygiene. But today, the challenge is different. It's the advanced cost of care, aging population, cost of living pressures, and the reformers of old, they'd be puzzled by board meetings and budgets that we have today that are prevalent instead of soup kitchens and direct action. But the underlying thread remains. Public services, they reflect national coherence. Nurses are working double shifts while seeing the backlog grow. The sense of frustration is evident and their tiredness becomes national tiredness. Now back to the housing. When homes cost more and more of your income, then your safety net begins to fray. You feel uncertain. And according to the latest government survey, private renters in England spent on average 34% of their income on housing in 2023 to 2024. And among the lowest quintile, I love that word, I only learned it yesterday, that figure jumped to 63%. And by the way, quintile means that any of the 4 values that divide the items of a frequency distribution into 5 classes, with each containing 1/5 of the total population. And yeah, I'm always fascinated by the research turns up. Anyway, there's also a deeper thread, identity politics and public trust, and that's in disarray. Trust in institutions is fraying, And I'm not complaining too hard about that. And many people, especially the young, they feel disconnected from how decisions are made. The survey data shows that big issues such as immigration and economy, they actually move around and swirl in public consciousness, but not in ways that are easy to understand. So people are finding them hard to deal with. Now, in the 19th century, the Chartist movement, they mobilized working people demanding political inclusion and representation. This is something that I'm keen on. I want to keep it working class, but human at the same time. But today the form's different, even though the longing's the same. The need for a voice, for a stake, for fairness and representation, and it doesn't seem to be happening. People are suspicious. They feel that there's an unknown and an unseen force manipulating them and pushing them towards certain goals of hidden agendas. But instead of dealing with the issues, they start creating conspiracies instead. And politically, it seems either the hard left or the hard right both end up with their own crazy conclusions. One want to burn down hotels and the other want to dye their hair blue and run around spouting some nonsense. And as much as I try to side with everybody and feel for them, I think both sides are pushing way too hard. But then again, I'm talking about the extremes. Now, the Londoner Post, they wrote an article which said that when politics is unstable, uncertainty seeps into daily life. And this is evident. Leadership changes, disagreements over direction, strains between regions and central government. And the sense is that society is being pulled in multiple directions at once. And another point of contention, if I may, is climate change. Now, climate change, green energy transition and the future of work are key points. The UK has committed to net zero and other targets, but implementation remains very uneven at this moment. And this again echoes the past when Britain became the workshop of the world in the 19th century. It also faced the challenge that industrialization brought, pollution, health issues, social dislocation. And now the challenge is different, but it's still a challenge. The tension's familiar. Progress versus cost, or the long term versus the immediate. Now, picture this. Picture the young graduate, degree in hand, moving back to live with parents because the rent's too high. The retiree with a fixed income seeing another energy bill spike. The bus driver in Stratford working full time yet worrying about savings. And the housewife in Cornwall looking out at the ocean, wondering if the next generation will stay or leave. And these are the faces of our issues. These are not abstract statistics, they're pulses, they're the beat. So what can we do? Well, possible solutions and a note of hope is to boost productivity and investment in people. We need to invest in skills like the good old apprenticeships in my day, in technology, in infrastructure, and think of all those places. We have to think hard to try and locate where those places are which require the extra attention. And thinking back to Britain's Industrial Revolution investment, it should remind us that change takes long-term commitment. And of course, colonialism, but we'll find something to replace that. But it needs to make housing more affordable, expand social housing, even for those that claim that they hate socialism, reform of planning laws, rental market protections, and ensuring that those on low incomes are not priced out entirely. And I believe it really can be done. In fact, I know it can be done. We need to strengthen public services in the NHS, and this means not only more funding, but smarter organisation, prevention rather than just cure, and recognising the human value of those who serve. We also need to rebuild the trust amongst ourselves, each other, and democratic inclusion. We need to engage citizens, involve communities in shaping their futures, and to ensure policy is transparent and that people feel that they have got a stake. Community, community, community. And also we need a green transition with fairness. The challenge of climate change is an opportunity. Renewable industries, retrofit homes, jobs, future jobs, not just telling people everything's going to be computers and IT, but this has to be inclusive so that no region or community is left behind. Small pod homes are going to be a thing of the future. I've seen them appearing up on social media, and it's a plan of mine which I had ages ago for these pod villages and so on. But I'll talk about that another time. The UK has done hard things before. The British have never been work shy. The Victorian era transformed industry, public health, transport, and created railways and homes on a vast scale. Obviously funded by colonialism, but that's the history, and we're aware of it, and now we have to move forwards together. Today we face a different set of trials, but they're not insurmountable. We can choose to see these issues, but not as fate, but as a clarion call, not as decline, but as transition, and to build a Britain where the kettle can be set making your cup of tea with calm, where the young graduate has hope, where the homeowner has stability and the public service worker has dignity. Together, stepping into the future isn't easy, but the very fact that we see the problems is the first step. And the next steps are in our hands, all of our hands. I am the OBG. Okay, so cut that one off, and thanks for listening. And remember, in order to do amazing things, you have to be amazing. You are amazing, and I am the OBG.